What's up, YouTube? Looks like we're online. Microphone adjustment. Cool. Today's topic is pretty short. Just wanted to share one interesting thing I stumbled upon. So the title of this stream is Constructive Questions. So what is the motivating thought for this question? So here I wrote a blurb. One reason I started studying tech stuff, so this is mostly computer programming, that sort of thing, was because I could actually read documentation about how stuff works and try it out myself. But I don't know how lots of other stuff works. For example, how a lot of buildings were built. So maybe a lot of other people have a similar experience where the things that you spend a lot of time doing are things that you had access to experiment with or try out. So, for example, if your family had a bunch of land and you could make stuff out of wood, then I think it would be natural for somebody that comes from that sort of background to maybe have experience building various stuff out of wood, because they would have these things available to them. So a lot of us people in this digital timeline grew up without very much stuff to mess around with or play with beyond like digital stuff. So in the digital sphere, whether making websites or videos or like playing games, you play your Minecraft, build a world in Minecraft, something like that, then that would be the space that you were able to explore and do things in. Anyways, so what I had access to was like information. So that's one of the reasons too I've spent a bunch of time learning languages and things, because I would have access to books and dictionaries and of course websites and this sort of thing. So that is one of the reasons that I got into that area. On the other hand, some areas that I haven't really explored or looked at much at all include construction. So I don't have like a big plot of land, and no one's ever said to me, Alan, I don't know, go build a library. My library building experience amounts to building bookshelves out of the cheapest standard wood I could get at Home Depot, pine wood, and smashing those together into bookshelves. So I don't have very much construction experience, but then slowly, as I've had needs to do stuff, then I have tried to learn, experiment, and figure out how does a lot of the stuff we have in this world, how is it put together. So that was one of the motivating questions for this topic, constructive questions. So we could look at all sorts of the things around us, and then we could ask how the most beautiful of things are put together. So just a couple more examples. So for instance, if you're told, oh, this person's a good writer, that person's a good writer, well, you could study people's writing style, you could study the grammar, you could do all that sort of work, and then you will be able to reproduce the effect, or at least make a start at it if you apply yourself and practice. Similarly, too, right, if you want, like, you listen to some sort of music, you like that music, then if you want to take it apart, analyze it, and see how it works, then studying that music and getting whatever equipment you need would be the path forward. So in my own life, I've only touched a lot of quite cheap, small things, like, to buy a paperback dictionary doesn't take very much to get started pouring into certain sorts of hobbies or interests. Really, how you increase in understanding is to put in the work and continually push yourself to learn, which of course is hard. Okay, so that's the general blurb to start here about why this is the constructive question stream. But the main subject matter that we're going to be looking at today is this question of constructing buildings. So if you've walked around your own town at all, you may have seen people constructing small homes, maybe even some office buildings, some things. But then you look around like an older city, a bigger place, and you will see some pretty astounding stuff. So here, today I went around my own downtown in Sacramento for a bit. And here's like a shot of the Capitol building. And if I zoom in, you could see all these fancy stonework statues. I don't know exactly what they're depicting. Might have to do some research on that. You can get like a little metal thing at the top here in this dome. So this would be considered a kind of old style building. I don't know if you'd call it neoclassical or something. I'm not so familiar with the exact terminology. But clearly it's an older style building, not like a new modernist sort of thing. So how do you build a thing like this? I've been to Home Depot, but at Home Depot I can't purchase a column like this. So if you were to go out and build one of these things, what is the process for doing that? Who could do it, and how does that come to be? Because, a lot of these buildings, they look pretty cool, to be honest. So let me show another picture or two. Right, so then I walked around downtown a little bit, and I came across, here's like a door from what looks like an old bank. And you could see, the metal door, very intricate work here. The stone. So is it carved stone? Did they pour cement in a thing? That's what I'm saying. I don't know how this stuff is done. And most of the new buildings and stuff that I do see built, they don't look like this. Or for instance, maybe somebody might have like a little statue, but then they might have purchased the statue and then brought it in. But a building of this sort of nature would not be super common. Okay, and then go to the next image. Yeah, here. So then this was part National Bank of D.O. Mills and Company. So this large building. Now, I'm not sure, I don't think it was open, but it's part of this bank. And then, looking at, so did they have like pieces that they connected together? And that's how they built it. But even, look at this. Like even on the underside, you see all this intricate detail. Is that like some lion heads looking down at me? Tons more detail. Anyways, so like walking down at a downtown in a place, you could see all sorts of really cool looking stuff. Okay. Now, so that's like old style buildings. Then on the other hand, a lot of these new style buildings, I think this is like a courthouse or something. It's kind of creepy. It's like, what does this symbolize? These abstract forms in a circle with a fountain that's not running, and then it's kind of like prison-like. It almost looks like some component on a computer motherboard. So that was one thing I saw. And then here's another shot. It's winter, so a lot of the trees don't have so many leaves. Big building in the background. And then let me just show a couple more shots. Here's a Scientology church near me. I feel like I'm like playing a video game. Walk by and then I see a building like this. I don't even know if anyone's using it, but it's like from a different era, kind of smashed together. And then I took a rather dramatic street shot. I thought that this atmospheric look. So then these would be more modern buildings. So you'll notice there, oh yeah, it's like Kaiser here, big hospital. So they're a lot more rectangular and boxy and not ornate, right? They don't have all these elements on them that I think would look more human. Instead, they're like squares and stuff. So they kind of look like if I search for a computer motherboard and you go down, or let's find a shot of, yeah, like this sort of shot, right? So you go down into a lot of the modern cities and you feel like you're in this sort of world where there's these big towers too. If you haven't seen how a lot of East Asian cities now look, like let's just look at a representative big Chinese city, Shenzhen, China. Take a look. So this is known as a pretty high-tech place. Here's a big crowd going around. So unlike a lot of those old cities, you can see that one thing I noticed, I visited Japan, and I noticed that everywhere it was being narrated. So like a door opens and then it's like the door is opening, and they'll say it in like 3 languages. They'll say English, Japanese, Chinese, and then maybe Korean if it's a really crowded place. The elevator is going up. Elevator ga what agarimasu. I haven't spoken Japanese for a while, but I think that would be right. Door ga akimasu, so on and so forth. Everything was being narrated. So you could contrast something like here, you see all these people and then all these symbols, all these it's just like it's a verbal world where everything you're being told, this is what this is, this is what this is, this is what this is, and then with the signals and stopping lights and all that sort of stuff, you're being directed and told how to interact with this world. Mimtel says the creepiest abstract building in the U.S. is the AT&T Long Lines building in New York City. It's totally windowless, looks like a giant vat in a dystopia. Rumor has it it's an alphabet agency center. Xa says, hi, Alan. Yeah, I think we've pulled this up before, but let's look at AT&T in New York City and take a look at that. Yeah, so it's like what happens? What goes on in this building? Is it mainly are people in there, or is it kind of like like a nuclear reactor? Because of course we have a lot of buildings that are a particular shape for a particular reason. Like they have a huge water cooling vat and all sorts of stuff. Like nobody's living in these things. Kind of close to me, there's these pretty. Why did that get clicked? Was it? There's like all these water tower things that kind of look like alien spaceships, but I'll like see these things all over. So we could get pretty. You actually go around and you look at. You just look up. You look at the buildings around you, and you find all these really striking things. So I think these are pretty, like, when I look at this, it's not so mysterious how it works, right? Like, water is stored in here and then it probably goes down. So I see one of these things and it doesn't freak me out in the sense that it's more clear what it does. But actually, now that we're now that I brought up the concept of creepy towers, we gotta look at the Space Needle show. This thing was, it got the tinfoil hat crowd pretty excited. December 2nd, 2020. So this is about a year ago.
King 5's New Year.
Are you going to show me footage of it? Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's look at that one more time. Boom! And this is in 2020, mind you. It's almost as if they're signaling some things to you. Got some mathy looking cube there, looking pretty monolithic. Are you feeling puny, little human? And then here it's like a double helix, like DNA. And then a circle here. Flower. How many petals? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Huh, interesting. Is that like tentacles? Is this some kind of anime? All right, let's continue. And then clearly, you know, people have watched enough TV and movies to know this kind of looks like a flying saucer thing.
So again, this is not a fireworks show. If you look outside, you're not going to actually see anything around the needle. This is a virtual experience. It's using a technology
virtual experience
called sky mapping, which has never been done before. It was developed by Terry Morgan, owner of Seattle-based Modern Enterprises and founder of Borealis, a festival of light, in partnership with Maxenticity, the co-producers of Borealis, actually based in Belgium. So the big question, how can you watch? Of course, just join us on New Year's Eve here on King 5 at 11:35. We're going to be...
All right. Thanks, T-Mobile. Gave you some free advertising. So maybe in this building, they're trying to make some competition for T-Mobile. T-Mobile has a more colorful light show, so maybe AT&T needs to step up their game. Cool. So we'll be looking at some more buildings. Let's get to our edumacation first. So words of the day, Latin word gubernō, and this is where the word government, of course, happens. Government. And similar to the Greek word, we've talked about the Greek root that underlines the word cybernetics, cyber, whatever. Here, κυβερνάω. The Latin equivalent is actually the root that we see in the word for government. So government and cyber, like same word. And it means to pilot or to steer a ship. So you're steering the ship of society, I guess, or you're governing or managing. So what direction are we all going in to? That's where the word for government comes from. And the Greek word that we're going to look at today here, I don't know what all these diacritics and stuff, I don't know how to type them or anything. I just copy-pasted this. But this word historia is where we get the word history from. 3 definitions here: inquiry, examination, systematic observation, or science. And we'll get back to this. Body of knowledge obtained by systematic inquiry, written account of such inquiry, narrative, or history. So let's just jump in and talk about some epistemology really quick. So when people say a word like science nowadays, they often mean like what the experts say. That's essentially what they mean by science. Like if I said, oh, you know, I think that the tin can didn't land on the rock, the glowing rock in the night sky. If I said that, then somebody might say to me, oh, are you like anti-science or something? So by science, if someone's using it like that, of course, it doesn't mean oh, did they apply the scientific method or something highly specific like that. It's more about, you know, do you trust and support the people that are making these claims about how something works. Oftentimes people, if somebody has an alternative sort of view about something, they'll get mocked or laughed at. Somebody will say, oh, you want me to prove gravity? Oh, there's gravity. And they'll drop a pen. So nobody's going to dispute that observable reality that a pen just dropped. But if we're talking about what science is, right? A definition I've used multiple times on this stream is understanding cause and effect relationships. So that's quite a lot of leeway, very loose definition. But I think because when we're talking about science, that's often the case of what science is. So science could be, you could use science to develop technology in the sense that you want to make a particular machine that gets you a particular result. So if you understand the cause and effect relationship, if I cut down a tree in this way, then I'll have a cleanly cut log, and I could, make stuff out of wood. Then you're applying science that's informing you and telling you what to do. So there's a science in that respect. And likewise, if you have any problem, like let's say you're having stomach pain or something, you could try to solve that problem of like alleviating your stomach pain a number of different ways. So like a Western doctor might say, like take this pill and get a good night of sleep and drink a bunch of water. Okay, so if you did that and you follow those instructions, so lo and behold, your stomach might feel better. That might be good. Then you might have like your bro science friend. He's just like, just ignore it. Just go to the gym. And then if you actually listen to that, then maybe that will do the job too, right? And then somebody might say to you, just shut up and stop complaining and just don't eat. And that might do it too. So you could understand science more broadly to say, understanding you do something else happens. Why do things happen? And if you have a complex problem, of course, you might have many different solutions that are offered to that problem. So here I thought that with this word historia, that it was interesting that science was one of the definitions for history, because indeed one of the reasons why we study history, there's like that cliche, like, study history so you don't repeat the mistakes of the past. So I think that like who would disagree with a statement like that, right? So you go ahead and you do study history because you want to understand cause and effect relationships. So in that sense, we're all extremely pro science here. We're utmost pro science here on the Allen stream. Now, okay, so we're pro science in this regard. But you go and you study history, and of course there's people that do bad things to other people. There's people that lie. There's people that cheat. We know this from history. So why would you expect that in your current era that we've just eliminated these problems? Somehow people don't do these things. You just blindly trust the experts. You just believe because they say they'll make you comfortable or something like that. So, right. Studying history does give us scientific knowledge in the sense that we could look at human civilization and also technology and all sorts of other things and look at what are people using and for what purposes, what evidence do people have that they could do what they say they're doing, and so on and so forth. Like if you're going to hire somebody to do a job, then you probably want to hire either somebody that will listen and be corrected and could be trained up to do a good job, or someone that already knows what they're doing, and then you just pay them for an expected result. Like you order food, if you order a burger and someone gives you a hot dog, then you'll be like, I ordered a burger. Or if you order a burger and they give you like fake meat on your burger, you'll be like, I wanted to eat meat, not Beyond Meat. What's wrong with you people? So, yes, we're scientific here. Okay, let's now get back into the question of buildings and ask some constructive questions. So, I stumbled across a very interesting YouTube channel, which I'll bring up here. This fellow, John Levy. Now, just trigger warning, this guy is on the disc-shaped Earth team. And yeah, so he's going to say a lot of things that will a lot of people might get angry about what he's saying, I'll put it that way. So here I'll just read his blurb on his about. But he isn't banned from YouTube, mind you, so that's why I'm assuming it's safe to bring up and discuss his stuff here. So he describes this: a channel dedicated to exploring the forgotten history of humanity and other mysteries. Truth requires leaving the comfort of belief behind. So he's saying, don't just assume that everything you've been told about like history is true. Let's actually look at the evidence, look at what we have in front of us, and re-examine things. All material is intended for entertainment purposes only. Yeah, dude, it's just fun. Content may expand your mind and liberate your soul. Please consult a mainstream expert before consuming any of this material. Side effects may include seeing life as it really is, questioning everything, and a sense of wonderment as you see the world with new eyes. All right, let's sign up for this. Andrew says, "Howdy, Alan Turk." What do they say in Turkish? I think they say salam. Salam, Andrew. What's up? Okay. So this guy's channel, very interesting. One of the things that he proposes is that a lot of the large buildings and stuff that we see around us, like Capitol buildings, they were not created by the people who say they built them. Rather, they've been there for a long time, and basically people moved in and claimed them as their own. And the lines of evidence that he provides I have found to be quite compelling, because he'll refer to historical records like mainstream sources, including Wikipedia, places like this, as well as looking at photograph evidence. So you'll look at a big city. So one of them he's done a lot on is Salt Lake City. And I'll show the old footage of those. And then I'll say, okay, the people claim that they built this building in, 3 years. And at this time they said they only had, 3,000 people in the city or whatever, but then spontaneously this huge city came up. So it's like he examines the photographic evidence and compares it with the reported numbers and other things that people report on these things. And just to say, if we're talking about history and science, one of the things I thought was really valuable about this channel was the number of sources and things that he gathered together, like photographs and all this stuff. So there's a common reference point for different people that are trying to understand and figure out what happened. And it's not just we're all reading from the same textbook. Instead, it's kind of crowdsourced in the sense that you could have people that are taking photos, people's family photos, publicly available photos, all sorts of stuff. And gathering these things together, then you could ask these big questions about, okay, can we actually build these things that that we say we're building? So I'll bring up a quick historic example of kind of what we're actually able to do, what it seems like on the ground. So like in Salt Lake City, there's these huge buildings. All sorts of stuff. Like, look, it's huge. How do you make these things? Who makes these things? I don't know. That's why I'm calling this the constructive question stream, because I don't know how these things are made. And you would think, like, for a lot of stuff, I give the example of technology, programming type stuff. If I want to learn how to do like something in JavaScript, it's very easy to find out. I could just look it up, follow the instructions, and do the same thing. But then we start looking at things of bigger scale, and it's like, it's not so clear cut. Now, let me grab a book. So I'm not saying we don't know like anything about construction. For example, let me just show an example of some like raw data. Okay, like for example, I was at a used bookstore and I was looking at some old manuals for various stuff, not even that old. So like for example, if I want to learn how to do anything that's kind of like home repair, I have like a book like this, How to Design, Build, Remodel, and Maintain Your Home. Okay, so if I want to learn like what does framing look like, okay, I have to rebuild civilization, then I could look in this book, I could check up how to do framing, and you know, if I follow the instructions, I follow the plans, and I'm relatively you know, I do it good enough and I have enough supplies, then, you know, my building's going to be okay. So what I'm saying is like this, like a book like this is an example of what raw data sort of instructions would be about how stuff is done. Now, I bring that up to say that like a house isn't mysterious to me in that way. Like I don't remember or know all the ways a house is put together. But I have the materials, I have things readily available to me. So if I wanted to do it myself, I could do it. And like what's another thing that I've looked at recently? Yeah, like I got a friend on interwebs, you know, he sent me this, the Radio Operator's Handbook. And you could find these things online to learn about how like radio equipment that governments use. You could look up this and find out how to use these things. And then of course one of my favorite subjects is like languages. So I've showed, you know, this Greek dictionary a bunch of times because I'm learning myself some Greek among other things. And then just since we're on a roll here, two more examples. Like for artwork type stuff, if I want to learn how to draw a certain thing or how some particular type of images is made, then I could look it up in a book like here. Like here's a book, Drawing in Ink. So it will show all the tools that people use. You could find the names of people. You could see examples of other work. So here's how to make a bunch of different tonal values with the pen. Sometimes you'll get step-by-step instructions. Like here's some sick monkeys. Japanese monkey. And same thing with like, we talk about like a Japanese anime. Then I have an anime book here. This is even in a Japanese. And look, teaches you how to do all sorts of perspective stuff. So in this regard, the point I'm making here is that a lot of things are not mysterious to us, even as modern people, because we readily have the manuals and stuff, and you could reproduce the process. It's tutorials, okay? Now, there's other stuff that, you know, supposedly from people that are more primitive than us with all of our science and stuff, and they're able to do things that we don't know how they did. So I was looking up like in, I think it was 2019, the Notre Dame Cathedral in France, they had their spire collapse. And you could look at the people that are working on it. You know, they got a big budget and stuff to restore this. But when you look at the people that are working on it and things, it looks like, of course, they know how to put up scaffolding. They could look at a lot of stuff. But it's not like, oh yeah, we know exactly how they did this. Now let's just go in. Yeah, we remove this, put up stuff. It seems like more like you're surveying or studying an archaeological site and then trying to piece together how to fix it. So people certainly, you know, modern architecture, modern building, people know how to do all sorts of stuff. and I want to show, like, for example, if we looked at building a skyscraper, let's look at China. Then, of course, you could find tons of footage all over the world of how these things look. So, do we know what it looks like to build a skyscraper? Did aliens come down and build skyscrapers yesterday? I think that clear answer to that is no, because you could see video footage, and here, these are real. This doesn't look CG'd or anything at all. These look like real people doing real skyscraper stuff. You could see the machines used. You could see them welding things together, and then I don't know if this particular video has it. Oh yeah, there's some like time-lapse footage, so you could actually see how stuff is put together. So we know now with all these cranes and stuff, modern technology like pneumatic, whatever, all these things, we could make towers and stuff like this. But then this thing I never thought about was like with this John Levy channel, what he was showing was America's got all these magnificent looking buildings that were put up in supposedly like the early 20th century or late 19th century, and how did they build them if they didn't have all these modern tools? We know you could build a skyscraper with all these modern cranes, trucks, forklifts, and stuff. But then if we didn't even have the automobile back then, you had people literally in horses and buggies and stuff, then how did you ever get these things up? So, like I said, for drawing some things at smaller scale, we have tutorial mode. We know how it's done. You could actually look it up and we could find it out. Whereas for other stuff that we see all over the place, some of our biggest, most impressive monuments, especially of this old style, it's quite, I mean, I don't know how they're built. That's what I'm saying. It's mysterious to me. So, on the John Levy channel, he proposes that these things were already there in America, just as they were there all over the old world, and that basically pretty much all of history is not, as we're taught it in school, is kind of bunk, because some people came in, took over, and they spread propaganda and convinced everybody that they had built these things and stuff. Whereas in reality, you could see they don't even know how to build or replicate the processes to do these things. It's like the technology was lost. Same thing with the it's just like how we sent the tin can to the rock that's way up there. People might say, like, why can't we do it again? And then you might get like, no, well, we lost the technology. Well, budget constraints. It's like, since when do you people care about budget constraints? Like, something's fishy. Something's very, very fishy here. So that's a long rant to say, here on Alan's stream, I'm serious about science, and if you all come up with interesting science things, please send them my way, because I want to know, right, why does the world have the form that it does? And if we're not being told the whole story about stuff, or we're being misled, what are some alternative explanations? How do people explain the form of the world? And ultimately, the reason for asking these sort of questions, it's not just saying like, oh, the establishment sucks or whatever. You got to live where you live. You're inhabiting the world, so you don't want to complain all day. The point is, like, if you know how to do something better, then you could go ahead and you could actually, like if you could actually build and make the world more beautiful and a better place, by applying these techniques, by laboring to actually build something that you would like to look at, wouldn't it be much better to actually build and to work and to do something that you like, that you would like to see more of, rather than trying to like swallow copium? So like, I'll give an example. Like here I showed many times, like I play some classical guitar because I really like how classical guitar sounds. For a while, like I kind of tried to force myself to like maybe play some pop songs or something, because I was like, this is more popular. I should play music for other people. I shouldn't just play the music I like. I had this sort of thinking about it. But basically at the end of the day, it was like, if I'm trying to practice a pop song or something, it just feels terrible because I don't even like this song. I wouldn't want to hear it played again. The world's better if we hear this song less. So I'm not the acoustic guitar douchebag guy at the party that you regret inviting. I'll play antisocial classical guitar by myself in the corner. But that's to say, like, why would I want to understand music or something like that more? Well, the reason would be if you study it, you understand it, then you could produce more of the good thing. You could apply the work, the knowledge that you have for doing something good. So I'm looking too, like in the same way at, let's take construction, for example. So if you're working, would you rather work to build a terrible, ugly prison, or would you rather work on a like beautiful, soul uplifting structure, right? Would you rather do science to help build the digital prison for you and your family and friends, or would you rather like discover things about the world, science, right? Discover ways in which you could have like a less pollution, you could have nicer space to occupy, you could have more abundant energy, cleaner water. Like obviously, I don't have to tell you how those things I just said are like good things that you might want. So the point of being a little bit tinfoil here, once again, constructive questions. We're being constructive, right, in the sense that how do we figure out what is it that we want to work to do, right? And then if we can, using our effort, we would rather labor to do something worthwhile that we would see more of, rather than just like work. Just like, why are you working? Why are you building this thing? Oh, because it makes the most money. It's like, well, you're polluting the river. You're making the world worse. You're ruining stuff. You're hurting people. Why would you do that? So, like, for myself and for other people, I think a lot of people are interested in this. We want to figure out how to do better for stuff. So that's why we're asking these constructive questions. All right. Andrew says, completely unrelated to what you're talking about right now, but you mentioned earlier that you learned from church that all professions men work are to serve motherhood. Care to expand on that? Yeah, so I heard this from a priest, so I think it's legit. Basically, it's to say, in the U.S., we have all this talk about gender equality, this and that. We need to have more women in STEM, right? Like, you'll hear something like that all the time. And there's this idea that it's more equal if everybody's treated the same. I'll just pull up an image of the Mao suit in China to express this. So one thing that happened in communist China is that they would have both men and women, everybody would wear these same suits, Mao suit clothes, something like that. I want to see like a group shot. Well, in any case, you would have men, women, everybody would wear these same simple drab garb. So the idea is it's a more equal society because everyone's kind of the same. Now, that's a non-Christian idea. Instead, like, Christian idea would be that you have different people that work different roles, and that doesn't mean one person's better than another. It's just different people do different things. We're made different. So if I try to be a child prodigy, I can't do it. I'm too old, right? And if a child tries to be a mother, they can't do that because they're a child by definition. You can't do that. So what does it mean that all professions men work are to serve motherhood? That's to say that the ultimate model, the goal of the thing to build would be a good God-pleasing family. And what that would mean to make the next generation, you could only get the next generation if there's a child, right? Motherhood, so the mother raising the child. So all the things that the man does, all this work stuff, it's to provide the resources for the mother to support the household, to manage the household, to do all that in order to perpetuate the cycle of life. So the man isn't going to do, a man can't breastfeed and do all sorts of stuff. But the whole reason that the man is working and doing all these struggle and a lot of times, work, it's really hard and boring sometimes, all this stuff. It's like the whole point of doing that is to serve the wife in motherhood, to serve the family. And then maybe kids are adopted and stuff, not to say that woman's only purpose is to bear children, not saying something like that. Motherhood could also be, woman takes care of some adopted children, or manages and helps care for her parents, or there's all sorts of stuff that you could talk about. But the main structure of society is the family, and the whole purpose of the man working is to support the family and thereby grow. So the man isn't working so he's like, oh yeah, why do you work? So everybody thinks I'm a brilliant scientist or something. The man shouldn't do that, and likewise the woman shouldn't do that. No one should do it. The man's working to support the woman and the family, his wife, and then the woman is likewise, her main priority must be also the family. If she's like, oh yeah, I might kind of want kids sometimes, but if they get in the way of, my celebrity career, this is not going to work. It's going to blow up. So that's what I mean by all professions men work are to serve motherhood. You build nice buildings so children grow up and they see beautiful things. They know how an orderly household is run, and then they perpetuate that cycle, and they will do the same things. So everything's connected harmoniously. People are different, but they're not. It's not like a zero-sum game. It's not like I defeat you, I oppress you. It's rather a mutual obligation between different people in order to make a system that works. So I hope that was a adequate answer to that question. Of course, I'm just a single guy here, so consult somebody who knows more about this topic. But that's actually one of the reasons why I got back and started searching for religion, because I was looking. I was in a pretty just generic California liberal place, and I was like, this system doesn't work. If you operate in this way, are you going to have a socially harmonious family? Is this going to reproduce itself and be able to have a successful future? Or is everybody just miserable and coping and just failing overall? So my basic conclusion was, we got to find a model that works. And my belief is that the whole progressive family, all that stuff, it will not work. You'll have people on TV and stuff presenting it, trying to convince you that it works. But my own personal take on this is that it just doesn't work. It's not like I'm wishing for people that follow that sort of path for it not to work for them. I'm just saying, descriptively, I think it doesn't work. And if you try to follow that sort of path, it's going to fail. So if you're going to eventually turn around and get on the straight and narrow, the sooner the better. to decide to do that, because time is finite and you never know if you have tomorrow. So that's my answer to that question. Probably my audience is like 100% male here, but if it's not, what am I looking for? Like in my own life, when I plan on getting married one day, and when I do, right, then I'll be all in for this person. If they're like, don't be a nerd. You can't study 7 different languages. You need to just like work as a plumber, and you could practice Spanish for 15 minutes every day with me. Then I would say, that's fair to ask, because I have to be all in to what I'm going for, and then no messing around. That's straight. But on the other hand, then I would also be asking something similarly for that person. You have to have it be mutual. You can't have like a woman who says, I'm queen, you do everything to serve me, and I spend all your money, we're going on a vacation to Disneyland. That won't work either. You have to be able to say like, no, we need to be able to concentrate and work out this and that. So that's my views on those things, and I think they're going to be pretty fixed that way. Andrew says, I see, that makes sense to me. By the way, what denomination is the church you go to? Yeah, I've been attending Eastern Orthodox Church, Russian church. It's called the Russian church outside of Russia, the diaspora church. And related to buildings, now that we're talking about old world buildings, I think there are some of the people that, and this, I didn't even think of this when I started going to Russian church, but in terms of the people that maintain the domes and have the old world looking buildings, the Russians have some pretty fantastic buildings. So we could just pull up one. So like I've been to this church multiple times in San Francisco. Oop. I'll just pull up an image. But the inside is, even if you're not in the know, it is quite a glorious church. And it does not feel very modern. It seems quite traditional, old world. Chandeliers, high ceiling, everything. So cool. Yes, but I'm not I'm like entering it. I've been attending it, so I don't want to like talk too much about specifics of like I'm not going to start streaming theology or anything, because there's hierarchy. In the old world, there's hierarchy, and you have to follow it. So I follow, as just some person that talks about stuff. I could, talk about stuff that everybody sees, like what are the buildings of my city? Like I'm allowed to talk about that. But if I'm telling you, like, I will show you the way to heaven or something, then that's not something for me to teach about unless I'm instructed or positioned to do that. Cool. So let's continue here. Yeah, so this architecture question, one way this was brought to my attention years ago, kind of in Orange Man years, this video by Paul Joseph Watson. So maybe he's like one of the introductory to I'm not a generic California Democrat type channels. He's very popular. Here you can see this has 1 million views, 70,000 likes, so a pretty popular video. Anyways, this video became popular where he basically just pointed out, and he does it in kind of this whiny, criticizing, clickbaity style. But I think this video got popular because he hit on an intuition that a lot of new modern buildings kind of look sucky. You know, they're just like, what is this? What are you people doing? Whereas the old world buildings, like here's an example of building. I'll show one particularly dramatic, glum looking building. So I was briefly at UC Davis, and then this building was one of the infamously hard to navigate and unliked buildings. They called it the Death Star. You could see it's just a bunch of gray rectangles. So this would be expressed in like modernity, modern type buildings. Whereas we go and we look at more traditional buildings, like for example, even the one I showed of the state capitol just now of my own Sacramento, then I think generally, right, why would government and stuff take this sort of building? Because people think that buildings like this look good, right? It conveys, power, dignity, all these sorts of things inspire those sorts of feelings where maybe many of you have heard the idea that a lot of like high schools in the United States are designed off prisons, actually. Like, unironically, there's a lot of educational institutions and stuff that take their design principles off the functional operations of a prison. And you could even, this is related to last stream, like I was ranting about clocks and timekeeping and all that stuff, but you could see how like in school, even with the bell rings at this time, then you do this thing. It's like a very putting people on a artificial type urban sort of bugman rhythm, for lack of a better word. So yeah, anyway, so Paul Joseph Watson made this video about how modern architecture sucks, and it got really popular. And yeah, I think that video got popular because it touched on an intuition that a lot of people had, a lot of people agreed with, but maybe they didn't want to just articulate it because maybe you would offend someone. Maybe you actually went in to study architecture and stuff, and people are hiring you to build these buildings that suck, and that's no good. So yeah, anyways, so going back to really quick to the John Levy channel, then a channel like this, it's really astounding because it aggregates and just shows how all over the world you would have these very similar looking great buildings. Like I'll go back to the Capitol buildings in the U.S. one, and then sometimes it could seem like the old building, like the one with Sears, that someone just tacked their own letters on it, but it was almost like this old building was here before, and then some invaders came in and put something on. I'll bring you up to let's look at the Statue of Liberty, and then let's also look up Sol Invictus. So we got this really weird statue, the Statue of Liberty. And so one thing that the John Levy fellow pointed out was that the base of this looks like it's an old world structure. And then it was like at some point in history, this got tacked on the top. Almost like to show, you're conquered. And we could look at, when did the Statue of Liberty actually come to be? Let's check out Wikipedia. Okay, dedicated October 28th, 1886. So the tinfoil hat suggestion is that this structure, all these things were there before, and then this was kind of plopped on and announced as some people came in and started to inject their own ideology and narrative about how the country works. And there's some pretty overtly pagan things going on. So, for example, Columbia, an Indian princess. So you don't see Christ, you don't see saints. Instead, you see all these other symbols. And then, like, who is actually depicted on the Statue of Liberty? A lot of people will say the Statue of Liberty looks like a dude. Like, is that a man in a dress? Who or what is the Statue of Liberty? And one parallel a lot of people have pointed out was Sol Invictus, the sun god. And you could see right here with the same spikes coming out, just like Lady Liberty has these spikes coming out. Roman imperial thing here. So, I mean, I don't even have to convince you that there's a similarity here. Clearly there is. And if this is the case, right, if the Statue of Liberty is worshiping, like, or the Statue of Liberty is representing a worship of the unconquered sun, the sun god, it's like maybe America had like a long Christian past and then it fell, just like we talk about, like, fall of Constantinople. And in its place, a new civilization kind of copy-pasted itself on top of it. But there's still a lot of remnants of the old civilization that you could see in all sorts of other places. Right. So here, like, look at this dome here. And then let's take a look at, like, the Hagia Sophia and what the Hagia Sophia looks like. So I don't need to explain to you, how is there are parallels in structure. Like, magnificent, very famous building, Hagia Sophia. And then you look at a lot of these buildings in the Americas, and it's like they're the same but different, right? It's just like you have a lot of different people. All people are the same, being people in certain ways, but then there's all these individual differences between people. So similarly with buildings, it's like every building is unique, not just because of the location it has, but because of the circumstances in which it was built, and so on and so forth. So as opposed to like let's look at let's search pod home. Let's contrast glorious architecture of the past, these buildings that anybody would want to walk through to have their soul lifted up and soar. And then we compare that with, like, what's being suggested now, like pod living, where every building is like a manufactured printed pod. Oh, another dramatic one. Like, I'm gonna search for like shipping container home. So it's like a sort of ultimate expression of what could come. I actually saw one where the shipping container homes were actually moving. It was like a warehouse type thing where they were literally stacking and moving shipping homes. So it's like you live in a warehouse, kind of. It was totally it was a very moving video. Okay. So let us return on to topic. So now in the year of our Lord 2021, it's funny. It's like you start researching and looking at architecture, and you're like, I like this architecture more than that architecture, you are now thrown into the undesirable camp. Viata says, get into the pod. Dude, I am in a pod. I'm in a very small studio apartment. I'm already in the pod. I'm just I'm looking at what products to consume in the future. So I'm doing my job. I'm watching YouTube and looking for things to consume. Please let me be. Okay, so let's look at this article from Bloomberg City Lab. And this is pretty recent, April 27th, 2021. Inside the Tartarian Empire, the QAnon of architecture. On YouTube videos and Reddit boards, adherents of a bizarre conspiracy theory argue that everything you know about the history of architecture is wrong. And then it's a article that's just like trying to debunk all this stuff, and then trying to psychologize the people that might look at this. Who, why, to what possible end? As in many other more high-profile conspiracy theorists, this Baroque fantasy doesn't offer much in the way of practical considerations, logic, or evidence, but it's grounded in some real anxieties, pointing towards the changes wrought by the modern world in general and modern architecture specifically, and rejecting both. It's just shut up, you're anxious. If you don't like the pod, that's a problem with you. Get in the pod. And it's like, dude, is there something wrong with like walking around your city and trying to say like, wow, that's a really beautiful building? What were the circumstances that led to that sort of building being constructed? So pretty funny debunk we have here. Oh, here's like a large building in China too. So it's the same style of building. And one question I'm investigating myself is like, we look at America and then you see like Asian people and then you see like Native American people. Let's just say it straight, right? There's like some similarities in the features of like East Asian people and Native Americans. So we're all told about, walk across the, bridge, the Bering Strait. Like there's certain stories about it. But these things aren't like provable. You can't like reproduce them with an experiment. People could make different models. But if you're just being a normal person and just saying like, oh yeah, what is sort of my ancestry and where do I come from? There's ways to investigate and look at that question besides giving your data to like 23andMe or something. So it's funny, like you get all these advertisements for stuff like, it's like, oh, be curious, learn about science, all this sort of thing. Then you are actually curious and you do actually like learn about science, for example, by finding different explanations for stuff we observe in the world. Then suddenly they have to write a whole debunk article about you, about how telling you that you're anxious and that you're coping. And it's like, dude, no, I'm just saying that these are some really nice buildings and I'm wondering where they come from. Despite their interest in architecture, most Tartaria theorists do not appear to have backgrounds in the building trades. Many of the more easily refuted arguments spring from very basic misunderstandings of how the built environment works, as well as broader confusion about how buildings function in the economy and culture. An abundance of posters appear convinced that below-grade apartment windows in older buildings, for example, are evidence that the building has been mud-flooded. So, of course, like with anything, you could go into specifics and find, like, this one person said this one thing. And, like, I'm sure I've probably said a bunch of dumb things in this stream already. But if I've said, like, one or two dumb things, does that mean that, I haven't noticed whatever? But, yeah, these debunk articles, a lot of times, that's what they'll do. They'll, like, latch onto one thing and then they'll attack. Whereas I think that a lot of the people that are trying to figure out and find out what's actually happening in the world, like just do unto others as you would like them to do to you. So if you wouldn't want somebody to like try to catch you out on the word and then just be really difficult to you and not let you express what you saw or heard or something, then you shouldn't do that to other people. So certainly when you're just exploring, you're learning about stuff, then yeah, you might say something that's wrong, but isn't that being curious? Isn't that science, right? So just trying out and observing, seeing what stuff is, and oftentimes what that means is like saying what something seems like, it's like, I'm not saying that this is, but it seems to me like this building something, and then, if somebody shows you some evidence to the contrary. I'll just give you an example. Like before I did the stream, I was telling some people, could people actually build these old style buildings anymore? Because I haven't seen one of these that was actually being built. I've seen like houses in the suburbs and stuff being built, but I haven't seen something like this being built. And then, sure enough, like I was sent an article on neoclassical architecture, and then you could actually go and look up and see videos of like the construction of new buildings in the classical style. So do we verifiably have the technology to build a building that looks like this? It might be very expensive and stuff, but it seems, now in the year 2021, we do, right? Now, maybe in 1900, I don't know how they would do it in 1900, but in this year when we have all these cranes and trucks and all these things, we do know how this would be built. But in the past, we still don't know. So that's just to say, look at what's a real state of the knowledge, try to understand what is it that we actually know to do. And, if it's just a matter of showing somebody how something's done, then there's nothing to hide, nothing to be upset about. So that's why these angry kind of debunk articles could be somewhat humorous sometimes. And oftentimes, they'll adopt quite a mocking tone, just saying like, how do people even believe this? It's so stupid. Oh, here, they're mentioning John Levy. Let's see what they say about him. They sneer at the wedding cake topped Second Empire buildings designed by Alfred Mollett after the Civil War. For example, how many stamps did you sell to build yourself a post office like this? So let's look. Okay, so like one line of argument that's presented is there's the thesis that a lot of these big classical buildings, this wasn't actually first built as a post office. Rather, people came to occupy a building that was already there. So, if you try to build a house, do anything these days, could you build a house that looks like this? So if you ask a joke like, how many stamps do you have to sell to build a post office like this, is basically to say that the people that built these things, they didn't have to be dealing with all the building codes, regulation, taxation, and so on and so forth. The way that stuff's been built in the past, clearly you have to have just some power that allows this to be built and to grant permission. Because even if like you or I, we wanted to build a building like this in our city, pretend we had all the plans, well, like we couldn't afford it. That's just the simple truth of the matter in highly now becoming metaverse crypto land. We just can't do that. So I think that, I don't know about the specific video. Maybe John Levy sounded kind of snarky when he was saying this. I don't know. He seems like a very solid guy to me. I'm not going to diss on him. But how many stamps did you sell to build yourself a post office like that? It's just to say that, how would you get that sort of funding? How would that sort of work? It's not just about the money. You can't just stop and say that. It's like there's things besides funding and stuff that have allowed things like that to come to be. All right, then you just get people saying actually and refuting it. and so on and so forth. Okay, so what's the end diagnoses? This disregard for architecture's true history moves into a wider rejection of how disposably cheap and commodified the culture at large seems to be. As such, one canonical belief for Tartarian aficionados is that the elaborate temporary pavilions built for late 19th century and early 20th century world fairs were in fact Tartarian capital cities. It strikes them as improbably wasteful that anyone would erect these magnificent complexes full of fluted columns, domes, pediments out of plaster of Paris, hemp fiber, and straw, as was done for the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. So the author of this Bloomberg City Labs just towing the line, and we'll look at some of these pictures of these things. In Tartarian lore, these sites were ancient monuments that were co-opted to teach a falsified history of the world and make a few bucks selling popcorn and Ferris wheel rides. Then they were demolished to erase the handiwork of the real builders. So, I mean, you look at these images of here, Chicago World Fair 1893. I don't know, that's that's pretty impressive to me. These look like real structures. I don't know who wrote this article. What's the guy's name? I don't know. Zach Mortis. That looks pretty legit to me. We could look. Yeah, we'll just really quick. Chicago World Fair. World's Columbian Exposition. So, tinfoil hat saying that these were actually big cities that were already there, and you could speculate on the origins and stuff of what they were. So saying this is like actual real brick and, you know, a big metal dome. It's not just plaster. Not just plaster, bro. But these were actually real legit buildings. I mean, they look really legit to me. Cannot confirm. You know, I'm not debunking the debunk. But these look like, you know, permanent, serious things. And it looks like an old world like city you might think of if you look at Europe or something. Anyways, then the Team Tartarian would say, oh, you know, these things, these buildings, they were there, and then to find a way to just get rid of them conveniently, you have these fairs and you just say that they were temporary. So I don't know. A lot of question marks. But yeah, apparently, so this John Levy fellow, his channel is pretty popular. 156K subscribers. Popular enough to warrant a debunk from the mainstream people. Let's see what else the debunker does. Do prisons deserve a second chance? Reshaped by crisis, an anti-biennial reimagines Chicago. And then they're talking about experimental design. We could look at a modern city with some colors and murals. That looks like Google right there. What is this? Looks like a kebab, dude. What is this? Why the Gaza Strip may be the city of the future when monuments go bad. I read his debunk. Chicago's bid. Oh, Chicago. Interesting. Now we're not talking about Chicago Fair, but we're talking about Chicago now. So people with some redesign efforts. A lot of Chicago looks not so great now, but maybe they got plans to revitalize it. Cool. In any case, going back just to the building topic generally, I mean, we talk about things that are like everybody's business to some extent. Talking about things like public architecture, what are the like landmarks of your city? It's insofar as like talking about what would you call it, like minding your own business in some capacity, then I think that, right, we all live somewhere. We occupy physical space. So for anybody to learn about the area or the place that they're occupying, I do regard that as a realm of, it's not like you're going out and picking on someone and seeking trouble, but it's just trying to learn and understand about where you are. Andrew says, I wonder what this fellow thinks about the Brooklyn Bridge. All right, after this stream, I think I might have to go look up the history of the Brooklyn Bridge. Now I'm intrigued. Cool. Anyway, so that does it about my topic of constructive questions. Now I'm just going to quickly go through some news stories really quick. But I went on a city walk myself today, as I showed some pictures. That was really interesting. And last night I was watching a bunch of that fellow's videos. It's pretty, very provoking. But I'll just say, like, after watching a bunch of these videos and looking about a bunch of those old buildings, how does it feel? In some ways, I would say it feels very good, right? It's like you look at something beautiful, an old building, you hear some beautiful music. I think it's like good for you, right? To hear music, to see art, and thereby to feel encouraged to strive and do something better. If I'm just like sitting there and I'm eating some instant ramen and then I hear some beautiful music, I'd be like, look at me, I'm just like sitting here eating instant ramen. Maybe I should aspire and study and try to reach higher, and in that sense, that's one thing that also confuses me about these sort of debunk approaches to a lot of this stuff. It's saying, like, look, if somebody doesn't, support the current establishment view of science and stuff, but then they want science in the sense to understand how all these beautiful, great things are made, you're not like sabotaging anyone or anything. Like, what's the big deal? And that's where one of the reasons why, like, I personally believe that there's a kind of spiritual component to this. It's like, you align yourself with team good or with team evil, and when the people on team evil see people going on team good, then they get frustrated and angry and they try to debunk them. But then the people on team good just want everybody to hop on and join with them. It's like, we don't have to be enemies with each other. We could all work together. Everyone's unique. We just have to love one another and like find what God wants from us. I don't know. Sometimes it seems like our experts and scientists are just making things too complicated. All right, let's look at how people are making stuff too complicated. Here, I found an article. Chipotle hides the assembly line, testing new online order-only digital kitchen. So here, related to programming type topics, you see here a kind of black box principle where it's like, you don't even know the manner. How is it that your burrito is assembled? Instead, for those of you who have done some programming, it's like an API call. You type and then it sends some digital message to a server, and then the server gives you a thing back. I was just looking for let's just find a simple looking picture. Yeah, so here, yes, corporate graphics. Here, you hipster developer, you make a call to the API, and then does stuff with data, and then it gives you a return. But you don't know how that happens, what it does. That's why you would say that the API here is exposed to the user and there's software abstraction. That's how we call it in web developer land. Anyways, so Chipotle, they're kind of becoming like an API call where you ping the Chipotle API on your phone, then you don't need to know, whether it's people or computers or whoever in the Chipotle digital kitchen. It doesn't matter to you what's happening. But then you will go and you will pick up stuff. And here you say, how would you convince people to do this? Like, personally, I kind of like going to restaurants. It's fun. So how would you get people to do all this delivery stuff? In an effort to practice social distancing, more people are ordering food online, using delivery services, and hitting the drive-thrus. Chipotle's Chipotle Lane locations are also growing to accommodate this, and one easy way to do that is to take over buildings that already have a drive-thru. So here it's showing a Carl's Jr. restaurant that's closing, and then Chipotle might buy it up and turn it into their Chipotle Lane restaurant. Okay, here's another concept. Taco Bell Defy. Wait, did they really call it Defy? Taco Bell Defy has 4 drive-thru lanes, 3 for delivery services. Orders are made online. So you order your Taco Bell, then you go here and you defy the physical world by getting your Taco Bell more directly. Taco Bell, they've been doing some really cutting edge stuff. I found Taco Bell wedding. I kid you not, Taco Bell wedding. Take a look at this. Marriage is on the menu. Your happily ever after begins at Taco Bell's flagship cantina in Las Vegas. And you get wedding swag, the Taco Bell chapel, and they show their taco wedding bells, Taco Bell reception area, and one-of-a-kind bouquet. And they've had quite a they've had some diversity in the people they had. I'm just gonna pull up. Yeah, it's like a mainland Chinese couple that decided to get Taco Bell married. So they're making a Chinese fashion statement here. Anyways, that's to say, if Taco Bell is making their Taco Bell Defy, it seems like Taco Bell has been doing some pretty cutting edge research all over. Let's take a look. Taco Bell trademark, registered trademark, and franchise partner to revolutionize the drive-thru experience with Taco Bell Defy. Border Foods. So they're partnering with the company. The innovative restaurant reimagines the traditional drive-thru experience with 4 lanes, 3 of which are dedicated to mobile or delivery order pickups, providing fast, skip-the-line service for customers who order via the Taco Bell app, and third-party delivery services. These 3 lanes will supplement with 1 traditional lane, easing the flow of traffic and ensuring a speedy experience. All of this will help Taco Bell Defy's footprint, which is smaller or equal to existing store footprints. I think meaning like carbon something something. So it's supposed to be more efficient. It could serve even more customers, but have a smaller footprint, carbon footprint something. Interesting. Meanwhile, what else is going on? Here, JP Morgan admits to widespread record-keeping failures and agrees to pay $125 million penalty to resolve SEC charges. So this is a press release. When I see something like this, I think that it's basically telling people, right, if a fail does happen, you know that fails happen. So it's kind of preparing people, readying people for stuff to happen. Just like as you see more robo fast food and stuff coming. Look, I'll just ask a question. Do you all think that there's going to be more lockdowns? If anybody answered no, I ask you to check your privilege, because you're probably like in a really nice mansion or something. But I think the rest of us all probably predict that there's going to be more lockdowns. Nicholas says hello. Alan French, what's up, Nicholas? We're looking at architecture and Taco Bell. Okay, so here JP Morgan. So press release. Why would they release something like this? There have been tons of people in the financial space that are just talking about how things are really shifty and shaky. So there's this one guy that I think used to be a professional banker. You could look at this fellow here. So let's look at his bio. So Money GPS is a news aggregation source. It compiles data from government documents, white papers, mainstream and news articles, blah, blah, blah. And here, the former ABC and CNN correspondent Greg Hunter referred to the Money GPS as how to survive this. Da, da, da. Okay, so I thought that the guy that did this worked mainstream before. I don't know. I could look into him. Anyways, if you go on the internet, you research these topics, you're going to find all sorts of people talking about potentials for stuff to blow up. So here, I got to learn from his art of clickbait. He does it better than me. You know, bigger than layman can't be fixed. So referring to a previous big crash scandal thing. A lot more shocked expressions. Anyways, we see all these signals being sent out, putting people on the edge about what's to come financially for stuff, and just looking at the mechanics of it. Like, you've probably seen money printer go burr. Do you think money printer goes burr, could go forever? So when I see a story like record-keeping failures, what does that mean to me? Well, it's just like how I expect more lockdowns. If, you know, there's a disruption of financial services, there's a cyber attack, right? It's just like you could expect, if any of these things happen, I wouldn't be surprised. I'll put it that way. So I don't think anything happened today, but if something did happen, we'll say you can't say you weren't warned, in the sense that you get stories like, oh no, ruh-roh, record-keeping failure, uh-oh, Fed does this, Fed does that. So if you're putting your faith and trust in the banking institutions, my dude, you might want to find some other alternatives. Okay. Couple more articles. Techno-optimism fails in the Bay Area. So I saw this. I like this site, skimfeed.com. It's an aggregator. So if you don't want to, like, you know, watch YouTube or read tech news all day, see here Hacker News, Verge, Lifehacker, How to Geek, all these sites, and then some different topics you could do. But if you're just like, what does the establishment want to tell me for today? You go to a site like skimfeed.com, and then you're just like, okay, that's what they're doing. It gives you a pretty useful overview about what is the state of how the establishment is presenting itself today. Anyways, I think, did I find this article on... Nope, someone must have sent it to me. Oftentimes I get articles, someone sends it to me, or I might find it on SkimFeed. So here, this article is just detailing something a lot of people are feeling, and then it is articulated. And that's one reason I continue to do these streams. It's like I will talk about stuff because I'm able to make videos and articulate things. But the things I'm saying, you know, I share it with other people, and a lot of people say, oh yeah, I was noticing that same thing. So looking at blogs and stuff too could also be a useful way to get that sort of information, to find out what other people are saying and thinking. So here, the entire Bay Area has become a large declining tech company. And this is funny because literally it's just like, you know, you might use Google to log on to another tech company service that uses Amazon Web Services. So there's a very clear way in which all of these, at least major tech companies, they all actually do work and interface with each other. That's part of the dream of the tech stuff, is that, you know, all these little microservices technologies work together and they produce big results. So looking at this article, right, the large declining tech company. We've all read articles in the tech press and blogs analyzing how once hot companies lost their way. Most of them have followed similar trajectories and have a common set of characteristics. What if we apply the same large declining tech company framework to the Bay Area? So they've all connected, and we've seen a bunch of them fail individually. Why would they not all fail together? Whoa. It's almost like I eat too many cheeseburgers, and my friend eats too many cheeseburgers, and we all eat too many cheeseburgers. Anyways, then this person offers some reasons. So monoculture, talking about how the corporate, so-called corporate culture of these companies has all kind of converged. One way in which we see this in tech is the so-called code of conduct issue. So let's just pop on Wikipedia. So the code of conduct is a set of rules outlining the norms, rules, and responsibilities or proper practices of an individual, party, or an organization. Example, Bushido. No, I do not. You cannot run your company like Bushido. Only Japanese business could do that. I heard actually back in the 80s, I think, that there were actually a lot of like Westerners, like the proto-weeaboos, would actually read about Bushido and try to learn and apply it in their business. I guess there was a bunch of popular books and stuff about this. Yeah, contemporary. Even here, we have article on business and Bushido. Anyways, the code of conduct. Okay, we got to look at an example of one of these to express what a monoculture looks like. Okay, let's look at Microsoft, because they're like a pretty big mainstream company. So what is the form of a monoculture look like? So we'll look at, see which of these is easier to read. Okay, here. So this is about their open source culture. That means you write code for Microsoft for free, and then they maybe hire you if you're useful. That's what open source often amounts to. Okay, so we as members, contributors, and leaders pledge to make participation in our community a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of age, body size, visible or invisible disability, ethnicity, sex characteristics, gender identity, and expression, level of experience. Can you not discriminate against a programmer because they haven't programmed as much as another okay. Education. All right, so of all of you guys out there, guys or gals thinking of majoring in computer science, Microsoft open source is not going to discriminate on you based on your education. So, maybe just take those free courses and don't bother because they have a code of conduct. Okay, socioeconomic status, nationality, personal appearance. That's why you could be an anime profile picture, and that's not unprofessional. Race, caste, color, religion, or sexual identity and orientation. We pledge to act and interact in ways that contribute to an open, welcoming, diverse, inclusive, and healthy community. So what do? Example behavior that contributes to a positive environment for our community include demonstrating empathy and kindness towards other people, being respectful of differing opinions, viewpoints, and experiences, giving and gracefully accepting constructive feedback, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we all know, there's a lot of words here, but we all know essentially what sort of corporate culture this means. So to hear, yes, there's a monoculture, and then, for example, if you were like, well, actually, I think my religion's right, and, I'm going to be respectful to you, but I think your religion's wrong, then you will not fit in well with this monoculture. Viada says, just Microsoft applying its EEE method to an open source projects. Okay, we got to look at the, what is it? EEE extend, what's here? Embrace, extend, and extinguish. This is culturally relevant. Is a phrase that the U.S. Department of Justice found that was used internally by Microsoft to describe its strategy for entering product categories involving widely used standards, extending those standards with proprietary capabilities, and then using differences in order to strongly disadvantage its competitors. So Microsoft took market share, right? Embrace, we love you, open source, extend, and then exterminate its competition. Interesting, right? So you could actually, Viada's making a good point here that you could look at how big tech is kind of using this sort of methodology in order to get everybody into a monoculture in the same way. So it's not just corporate product stuff, but you could say that this is actually a form of lawfare. And it's lawfare in the sense that you could, people could get in trouble with the law for being naughty in the modern world. If you, say something you're not supposed to say, then you might be officially a hater. So here, lawfare is a term that can have a double meaning, but in both cases refers to using legal systems and institutions to achieve a goal. So obviously in the United States, we've got tons of lawfare action going on. People trying to use law and stuff to push their objectives. Okay. All right, another thing. Why else is Silicon Valley, Bay Area, why are they being a fail? 2, the declining brand and power of buzz. So when people hear Google or something, or now even Tesla, it doesn't get people hyped or excited in the same way. The novelty factor has kind of fizzled out. And now when you hear something like Google or Facebook or Apple, you don't think innovative. You think kind of big company, not so much as exciting, but, big company I have to work with. And 3, the empty campus and petty crime. So a lot of nerds working from home, so they're not getting together to innovate. And just crime stuff, which would make it less appealing to return to the campus. And 4, the people who leave and the people who stay. And then this is interesting because it's talking about how the sort of people that would leave or stay, it's kind of self-selecting for certain sort of people. And then oftentimes, who would the sort of staying sort of people be? Well, they like to be in a stable, well-known company with prestige. And then maybe that sort of person isn't going to be the innovator in the same way that the person who would be like, I don't want to pay California taxes. I'm going to Texas or whatever, Florida or Texas. So maybe that the people that they're left with are not the sort of impetus-driven, energetic people that they would want to be a growing company. So they're declining, and that people are just trying to rely on their prestige and get comfy there. And then 5, the shenanigans with finance and metrics, and we won't get into that. Besides to say, we've had a very interesting stock and crypto year. Okay. Final article. This one is like a good example of word salad from the Royal Society. So if you aren't familiar with the Royal Society, you need to put on a tinfoil hat. The Royal Society of London for Improving Natural Knowledge. And this goes back so here we're seeing going back to the 1600s, and we'll see a lot of famous people. Isaac Newton was a fellow of the Royal Society. All sorts of people. Is there just like some famous people? Anyways, all the sort of famous scientists you know of, there's a high chance that a lot of them are involved with the Royal Society in some capacity. And I want you all to know that the Royal Society continues to this day. And we could look at what sort of messages is the Royal Society sending to their kids. Apparently, they're not sending the message of, we have fast-loading websites. So, as big as their brains are, their page is not loading super fast for me. So maybe we won't get to look at this. Anyways, let's take a look at the Royal Society and see what they're up to this day. So their banner here, why we need biodiversity, and it looks like they got some image, they could use a digital art upgrade. And how do they talk about stuff? Computers versus mosquito. Can supercomputers help stop the spread of tropical diseases? All right, using computers to do stuff. Bat, rabies, and CV19. Can we stop animal-borne diseases? Right, don't eat bats. The lab studying the thing, sewage, mosquitoes, and PPE, genetics. So a lot of bioscience type stuff. And just know that when we're talking about bio stuff and genetics, this is the intersection between biology and computers. So one thing I've mentioned a couple times on this channel is the so-called Internet of Bodies. And this is something that people are totally serious about. You could see Rand Corporation's got it. And in 2020, our friends at the WEF have announced tracking how our bodies work could change our lives. And they got a creepy pyramid with a man of color running. We're entering... So they're just announcing it. That's another thing about a lot of these scientists. They just like to make proclamations. So let's see what they proclaim. We're entering the era of the Internet of Bodies, collecting our physical data via a range of devices that could be implanted, swallowed, or worn. The result is a huge amount of health-related data that could help improve human well-being around the world and prove crucial in fighting but a number of risks and challenges must be addressed to realize the potential of this. So they just announced that this thing's happening, and then there's going to be challenges. And then here you could see on the Royal Society site that they just perfectly line up with all this sort of Internet of Body stuff, where when you're talking about these sorts of technology, a lot of it's biotech. So using big data, computers, yeah, you could see unconscious bias. So if you don't like something that's going on. Oh no, that article, did it not load? What happened? Okay. The site is under maintenance. Oh no, my IP address is now exposed on YouTube. Well, please don't cyber attack me because the site did that to me. Okay, yeah, Royal Society. So what sort of stuff did they talk about? Artificial intelligence, of course. Gene editing. Why science is for me. So they want to do inclusivity agenda. Why a science career. They show a slightly non-pale skin female. Mind and machine. Another non-pale skin person. What is genetic modification? Probably telling you about not being scared of eating robo food. And yeah, and then you could also look, notice how all of the sort of space stuff is a big part of all of this narratives of big science. So living on the moon, how did life begin, future of cars, about self-driving cars, searching for alien life. So, okay, you think about what sort of society does the Royal Society have in mind for you? Well, it's going to be a lot more computers, data, automation, and robots. That's kind of given. And then what is the vision of the future that everybody is discouraged from? And the answer to that in one word is Tartaria. They don't want you to look, dream, imagine, wonder, oh, how could we return to Tartaria? If you start thinking about like, oh yes, that would be, this is the future I want. We've done it before. Why can't we do it again? Why can't we do this again? That's what they don't want you to do. Instead, they want you to think about, how you not wanting to eat bugs on a spaceship is your cognitive bias. But with a little bit of neuroscience and some implants, you too could welcome in the new non-Tartarian future. Okay. So I think that about does it for today. I think we asked some constructive questions and also began exploring some constructive answers. I'll just reiterate the sort of main practical stab I'm trying to get with this stream is, you could ask, like, what's the whole reason? Why would we look at history? Why would we question the narrative? Things like that. I mean, to me, the ultimate answer to this question is saying, look, if we want to spend our time and our effort working for something, just ask the question, like, how do I, what future would I want for my children? That sort of question. And, it very well may be that the future you want for your children is like the best the world for them to see and to have elevated souls and want to do better and behave morally and all this stuff. What sort of forms have people seeking God, loving one another, doing all the important things? And the answer to that question might be Tartaria. Would be the physical world on the on this earth that we see, as opposed to the Royal Society labyrinth chillwave mix. Yes, Mimtel says we was Tartarians. Yes, this is okay. So I'll just bring this up really quick. This is the other reason that I got interested in the Tartarians. stuff is, I've had this question for a while of like, who are the Asian people? Where did they come from? So Tartaria actually is like an interesting way to show how do Asian people fit into the whole picture of the like Rome, Greece, and then like Africa, the old world. You could say how do Asian people sort of fit into like Bible history, for lack of a better phrase. You don't have like China or Japan, Korea mentioned in scripture explicitly from what I know. But if we sort of open our minds a little bit and see different ways in which people have mapped and talked about regions of the world, and we also look at the stone, we don't just look at the textbooks, but we also look at the buildings and the forms, and we see some of these same buildings. Like here, I just clicked here, not is it a coincidence? I just clicked here, and it's showing a big cathedral in China, like a really big cathedral. So to ask that question of how is it that the Asia people are related to the European people, how they relate to the black people, then I think that seriously hearing what people have to say about like Tartaria and stuff could be a useful thread of investigation to answer that question. All right. Thank you all for joining, fellow Tartarians. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff, and until next time.